your terrible making do and mend, which you were talking about, you know, how important it was that nothing was wasted and how you turned up hem. But, of course, when the new fashions came in, we all began to feel feminine again.
So you had your big skirts and
yes,
loads of fabric.
Only when clothes came off ration, of course, because otherwise every a yard of material was valuable. So it was like everything those days. You cherished everything. Looking in the corner on that jazzy plate, I couldn't resist. I'd been using bacon for something. I'll tell you about it in a minute. The bacon rinds happened to be, and I thought, how we looked after those. We crisped them, and they went on the soup. Or they did something, but they were never thrown away. Never.
Of course, Margaret, part of your job actually during the war, on behalf of the Ministry of Food, was really to teach people how to make the most of their rationed food.
Most of their ration, and use things which were unrationed. And the carrots typify the really importance of plenty of vegetables. Plates would have 3 or 4 different vegetables, which was unknown in Britain. So I generally translate it to 2 lamb chops.
A week?
A week per person.
Per person.
But, of course, if you were a big family, you'd probably save everybody's together and have a joint. Oh, wasn't that a treat? And if you had cheaper meat, stewing meat, you'd have meat more often. And you had to eke it out with dried peas and dried beans, which, again, I've got a little gaggle of things here with a point system. As well as the rations, 16 points a month per person.
So the dilemma was, for example, how to spend your 16 points.
Oh, that was a terrible decision. Should you have 8 points on a can of meat or a can of salmon? And if
so this can of meat, for example, would have been
about 8
points.
And I wouldn't like to stake it because it's a long time ago, you know. Or you could be a devil and have dried fruit and make a fruit cake. Or you could have golden syrup and make a gingerbread like that. And I included that gingerbread in my book as well as today because it was a charming thought. There was no brands of margarine or butter or flour. It was the flour, the margarine. But well-known names kept their names alive by doing jazzy leaflets to interest. And this came from one of those, and it was let's entertain the hospitable Americans. They were so generous to
so it was a mix then of American and British.
A good British gingerbread, and they all loved their mum's apple pie back in America. So we didn't dare make our pastry because our flour was so heavy. So we had applesauce with the gingerbread. And, of course, used for that, our old friend or old enemy,
eggs.
whichever way you regard it, as dried egg. And there's just one thing that's important. So many people say, well, why did the children grow up strong and healthy? What could they have? Well, they had a very well-balanced, very plain diet, but they also had, and expectant mothers too, free cod liver oil, free concentrated orange juice. I couldn't match that because it came in a bottle like that, and I haven't been to America to get it.
Oh, well, I tell you what, I remember my mother with a spoon, you know, the cod liver oil down your throat before you went to school, and that was it.
Well, you look jolly fit, honey.
Now we're going to cook, Marguerite.
Yes, we are.
So what are you going to make?
Well, I wonder how many people know about faggots, because they were an old traditional thing. Shops, pork butchers used to sell them already. You could buy them. But, of course, they couldn't sell them then. So if you wanted faggots or to eke out the meat, you made your own. And you made them mainly with unrationed things. But don't let me give the idea that you waltzed to the butcher and said, I'll have half a pound or 3/4 pound, please, of pig's liver, because you said you had liver last week. You can't have any more.
Probably a week's supply or something, was it?
Well, when you're lucky, you queued for things like that. Liver, pig's heart, and then your bacon ration, if you weren't a bacon lover so much, or, right, you'd rather keep the bacon for something else, so you had a little bit of fat belly of pork with sage and onions, an egg, and various things like that.
Dried egg, of course.
Dried egg, of course. Though some people did keep chickens in exactly the same way, of course. Dig for victory was one of the great slogans with potatoes and carrots, and you raised your own. So here we are.
And all that bartering system that I gather went on, that if, you know, if you did have chickens and eggs,
if you did,
you bartered with something else.
Everybody loved you. So here I've cooked the various meats with onions until they're tender. And they've been cooking away for, it depends on the thickness, about an hour or or something like that. And then here we have at the front a good old-fashioned mincer. How we minced everything and made it more succulent. Yes, that's right. And this is it when it's been through the mincer, lovely and fine and smooth.
It's quite a big process, a long process, isn't it?
Yes, it is. You're our mate, really. So into that, let's
have just a little look at this.
Yes, lovely. Chopped thyme and sage. And we persuaded people to dry them in winter because you often couldn't buy them. In goes that splendid dried egg.
So presumably you were demonstrating all over the country, showing people how to do it?
No, we all had their various areas. I may not have told you before I first began on the Market Square in Cambridge. There we are. You might need a little of the beautiful stock. Oh, how precious stock was that you made from meat.
Well, you always would have had a stock pot, would you?
Well,
you would have saved it anyway.
You would have saved it. We never wasted anything. Now, then you just, let's get that out of the way. You just make that into balls like that.
Was this really a very, very popular dish at the time?
Well, it was a dish that had been made by pork butchers. I think a lot of people had never tried it in their lives, but many people had. So there we are, and you go on filling like that, and you bake them for about 45 minutes. And here, coming from the oven,
the faggots, well and truly roasted.
What do they taste like? A little bit like hot pate. And we tried so...
They're quite tasty, really.
Very tasty. So hard to get colour in, so we'll put a few carrots and parsley. Now, what went with faggots? Peas pudding. Dried peas with onions and a lot of herbs, thyme, parsley, lots of mint, which goes so well with
But actually, the peas pudding was very popular to go with lots of dishes, wasn't it?
Heaps of them, because it was an eking out of things, and, of course, good protein food.
Did you get lots of peas? Were they rationed?
On fresh peas, no, but only in summer. Dried peas on your point system, but you've got a big bag of peas for your 16 points, a huge great bag. And then you cooked them, and there we have them cooked and drained there in the colander. And then you put it in a basin and you steamed it. And I think every modern housewife, see, good old-fashioned string,
look at this,
is going to say, what an extraordinary way, Marguerite, to cover a pudding. I'm in the 40s, remember. No greaseproof paper. Foil didn't come until the 60s. And, oh, you've got to have cast-iron fingers.
So you would have saved then all your
I would have
lard
saved that.
papers.
I'm ripping it off with gay abandon now. But I
so this was your butter paper, was it?
Oh, yes. Butter paper, margarine paper. And there we have the peas pudding. And it's a lovely sort of creamy texture.
It's a bit like just mushy peas, isn't it, really?
It really is. That's a fairly firm one. But if you'd bought it before the war from a pork butcher, you would probably have taken your basin to have it. So I'll put it down there. And again, a very, very easy dish to mix. So this is showing you beforehand. All you did was to add to the peas your egg, a little butter, make it lovely and soft, into the basin it goes. I must make one comment.
Is that a dish that you would make these days or not? Or?
Well, funnily enough, Gloria, I thought if people didn't want the bother of dried peas, there we have fresh peas, and frozen peas will make you a 1999 peas pudding. So we can have the 1940, take your choice. But one last thing I'd like to say, never in a million years with the 40s would I have had a steamer on with just a pudding in. Round the side would be the carrots and the potatoes. Waste no fuel was another very important thing.
And do you think a lot of those habits have stayed with you in terms of being quite practical and frugal almost?
And I'm sure that if you know people of my era, they will all say the same. I will undo the string.
And you keep the string?
We had to, because it was like, I don't know that I'd have done that today, and I probably won't. I'm probably going to toss it away.
I'll tell you something, Marguerite, I will never waste the rind of my bacon ever again. I will remember that.
Wonderful resolution. I will hold
Marguerite, thank you.
that.
And congratulations on your book, by the way. So it's Recipes of the Century. Marguerite Patten.